Hi and welcome to this Tech Geeks video. Today we're going to be talking everything mesh and extenders, how to improve your wireless in your property and potentially to other buildings using mesh. Now, there are lots of other vendors out there. We're going to be doing stuff with D-Link, TP-Link, Netgear and Ruijie. There are plenty of others, Google Nest, Amazon Eero, there are ones by Asus and Tender. What we've tried to do is we've tried to find something that is easy to extend and regularly available and would also fit in other buildings. We're aware that some people extend Wi-Fi to areas that a beautiful Google Nest might not be totally suited to, your barn, your workshop or something like that. So most of these are a little bit more robust and will provide that. We've also made sure that they're wireless 6 and they're under $500 Australian dollars. So it gives us a good benchmark of trying to find a solution that fits. There are plenty of, like I said, other vendors, there are plenty of other speeds and everything else. So it's all about your budget, but this gives you an idea. We've also been setting this up with StarLink, which is easy and just as an example, but it will work with any internet service provider. You need a router that has a spare Ethernet port, or if you've got NBN that's coming in from and giving you an Ethernet connection, then you can plug these devices directly in. They will work as a router as well. So I do hope you find this video useful. Right, so I know you're excited and you want to move on to setting up mesh or seeing how it works, but I first want to set a few principles in place. So wireless is governed by several things. So the first thing is wireless is about density, not distance, in a basic form. What does that mean? Well, the antenna that we have in these devices, although modern mobile phones are pretty good, it defines how far away or how well your wireless is going to work. It's not about the strength of your wireless access point. This is not about getting one massively powerful wireless access point and being able to cover acres and acres. It is going to still be driven by the antenna in your device. And so maybe you bought some smart light bulbs, all of those type of things. Those will often have fairly poor antennas in them. Now the problem we have with our current Wi-Fi and even in the start of Wi-Fi 6 is that an access point can only send or receive. It can't do both. It also can't keep a track of everybody's unique speed. We're starting to see changes for that coming in wireless 6E and wireless 7, great. But right now we're governed by this. So what does this mean? It means the further my phone moves away from this access point, the slower my speed on my mobile phone, which is totally logical. But it also means that this device has to drop down its average speed that it is going to connect to all the other devices at the same time, which effectively means that if I'm 100 meters away from this and I get my slowest speed, it's going to have to drop the speed down for most of the other devices connected to it as well, which obviously means that we're going to create a poorer Wi-Fi experience for those people that are right by it. So that's why adding more access points in this, we're going to be talking about mesh and extenders, adding more of those will increase. It means that your devices are spread across and one person has less impact on affecting everybody else, or one person's device has less impact affecting everybody else's device. So that's the first thing. Wireless is about density, not distance. Using more access points is better than trying to find one that covers all your space. Then the second one is what materials affect Wi-Fi. All right, so let's start at the top of the tree. The worst one is metal. So if you're trying to get metal through an ironclad or a color bond clad building, maybe you're trying to get it into a shed or something like that, then you're going to have difficulties. You're going to probably have to use a wireless bridge to get it there and then have an access point inside. So metal has a significant issue when it comes to wireless. Wireless is a digital signal, metal absorbs it because it's electrical and converts it into sound. So metal is probably one of our worst. Then we move on to things like if we're outside, we're talking about tree trunks, we're talking about branches, we're talking about leaves, we're talking about things that absorb water and are fairly dense fibers. So they're another one of our enemies. Inside, again, the thickness of our walls. Some people have got bluestone walls, which are almost impenetrable just through to their just sheer thickness. So again, you would have to probably in those instances have a wire between them. You can try some of these devices and see whether it works, but cable is going to be the best option. You then have things like concrete. Concrete again is fairly dense. Most of these devices will go through at least 1 or 2 concrete walls, and we'll show you at the end some of the performance that we've got from these devices that we've tested. So it is again about maybe putting these at close enough distance so they can repeat each other and get you through those. It will travel, wireless will travel through things like glass. Glass does have some issues on it. Obviously, if you have double thickness glass, maybe you've got insulating film on it, then those immediately will reflect the signal. So do be aware of these key things before we talk about all of this, because these aren't necessarily going to be a complete answer to your problem, because if you do have metal clad you're trying to get through, you do have heavy stone walls, you do have thick concrete, then you're going to run into some issues. Wireless does penetrate some of it, but you may be only going to get 5 or 6 meters at a time. So hopefully that sets some good principles to get ourselves going with. So hopefully that gives us a good starting point. That doesn't just apply to repeaters and mesh, it applies to wireless bridges and everything else like that, so wireless in general. So let's have a look at the difference between what we consider an extender / repeater and what we choose as mesh. So this is an example of an extender. This is a TP-Link RE650, I think it is. It's got these antennas on here, all right? And then we'll use this TP-Link X68 as an example. This is a mesh device. So what are our differences here? So a repeater / extender does exactly what it says. It will join a current Wi-Fi network and rebroadcast it. It generally will rebroadcast it with a different name, and as long as your device is connected and has the password stored, then it will roam from one device to another, but it is literally repeating it. What does that mean? Well, wireless in today's standards means that it can only send or receive. So we've got our access point over here, this is, or our router, this has joined the wireless there, all right, this is repeating it here, and I've got my mobile phone over here. If my signal, if I want to make a request for a web page, I'm sending the request from my mobile phone, it then makes a request to my repeater makes a request to your wireless, all right, the router then returns, the wireless router returns it to this device, which returns it to this. So what do we have? We have several problems here, potentially. The quality of the router, the strength of the wireless signal to here, and the quality of the device at the other end. So we see a speed degradation using a repeater, but it does meet some needs. For instance, maybe you've got StarLink, we've got StarLink set up here in our test bench really to show you how all this works. This out of the box does not come with an Ethernet adapter, so you can't plug some of these in without buying the optional Ethernet adapter. So this is a great option. This will join the StarLink's router's wireless and repeat it with a different name. So maybe we've got the SSID, the network name for your wireless. It's called StarLink Test. This might be called StarLink Test 2. And so my device will connect to this. So we've got these points where we do see some potential problems. We will also talk about this in a moment, but you're going to see roughly a half speed drop through each repeater that you have. So it's always best to spend a good amount of money to get, if you're going to stick with repeaters, to get the best repeaters that you can. I think this is an AC2400 or 2600, which means it can do over 2 gig a second. All right, which means that when I go through a first hop, and it's going to halve its speed, all right, it's half its speed, although that 2400 is part of both frequencies. Let's assume that this can do 500 megasecond in the 2.4 gigahertz. Your router is going to connect to this. The next onward hop, it's going to see probably no more than 250 meg a second. All right, but that's still faster than probably our StarLink or our current ISP. So by investing in making sure we've got these that go fast, we will never see that speed decrease actually affect all of the devices. But we will talk a little bit more about that as we go through. So that is probably what a repeater extender is. These are great. This one's got power. We'll have a look at these a bit later. Just plug it straight in. Wants to be about halfway between your router and your dead spot. All right, and this will then repeat the signal and hopefully help you get rid of that dead spot. So repeaters definitely have a place. Then let's talk about mesh devices. All right, so this is 2 TP-Link Decos. These don't repeat wireless, they create a whole new wireless network for you. They're designed to be a router, take over your current router's connection, all right, and make a brand new wireless. Often these have separate antennas in them so that they can do communication between them, all right, which means that the device is available to accept your inbound request over here, all right, and on another antenna or radio, they will communicate with each other. You will generally see better performance on these, and you can seamlessly add multiple of these around on different floors, space them out, and the distance between them can obviously be a little bit greater. And for some people, if you've got a granny flat that's maybe only 10-15 meters away and it's not clad in metal, then the likelihood is that you can probably put one of these in that other building and repeat and mesh your master one or one of the other satellites of it. So a mesh, there are two definitions of mesh. Some people talk about mesh being a single SSID, a network name and password that all of your devices share. That is a standard with this type of mesh that we're talking about. But this type of mesh is being able to extend your wireless without Ethernet cabling between each of the satellite devices, all right? So we've got 2 here, but you could add 3, you could add 4, you could add 5. Same principle holds for what we talked about here with the repeaters, that you halve the wireless speed for each one of these that you go through. But as long as they are faster than your internet connection by 2 or 3 times, you ultimately won't see the difference. So these are AX3600s, just looking down at the box there, which means they can do over 3 gigabits a second. Probably in the 5 gigahertz band, they can probably do about 1800 megasecond. So each halfway, if this was able to do 1800 megabits a second, this one here is going to do about 900. If I had a third one down here, we're going to be down to about 450. But our internet connection maybe is only 100 meg. We would never have seen any difference. So again, it's about investing the right amount of money and then remembering that principle of the materials that you're traveling through and also the distance you need to go. More is better. So that is probably our main differences between an extender, which is just repeating the signal, and mesh, which is creating a whole new wireless network for you. All right, so now let's get into the good stuff. We've got the principles in place and we are ready to go. We're just going to look at this extender first. Give you an example of this because it's probably one of the simplest things to do. Like I said, this is a TP-Link. This is an RE650 extender. Can do 2.4 gigabits a second, so about 500 megasecond in the 2.4 gigahertz frequency, and over a gig a second there in the 5 gigahertz frequency. So again, at least 2 times the speed, probably 3 times the speed of your internet connection. So firstly, we're just going to get that plugged into our mains socket. We need to have this positioned near our router as this first setup. So let me just plug that in. All right, so now that's plugged in, we're just going to grab our phone. You do need to go and get the Tether app, follow through all the processes that it wants, sign up to an account, all right? And once it's there, you will want to actually plug it in and power it up, all right? Once it's plugged in and powered up, then let's just follow through the process here. So we're going to start the app up. Once we have gone into the app, we have the option there to add a new device. It might say that it hasn't been able to find any devices, but do then let that search for a new device. You have to often choose what it is, so choose your range extender, make sure it's powered on, make sure the LEDs are all powered up on the device and ready to go. And then it wants you to join that network. So again, we're going to join it. Once we've joined it, it's going to allow us to configure that device. All right, and we're going to step through that process. Sometimes it struggles to seem to join the wireless that's there, and I have found that sometimes I've needed to go into settings and join the Wi-Fi. You look for it and it'll often be called TP-Link extender or something like that. So you can hop in and connect to that. You can then continue to walk through the process like I am doing here, all right, and it will allow you to choose from the list of all the wireless connections that it sees. Obviously, it's going to need the password for it, so do make sure you know what the password is for your wireless network. And there you go, you can go all the way through. It will then take a period of time to set up your new network. Like I said, this will have a different wireless name. It's not going to be the same one. It's going to rebroadcast your current one and add a different name onto the end. It doesn't matter whether you're running StarLink or a different ISP. This is completely separate to all of that. This is just repeating your wireless connection. So let that run all the way through. All right, and as you can see, now we've got to the end, we have a wireless connection. We will allow our device now to connect to it. We can do a little speed test here at the end if we want. This is the standard speed test that we have with StarLink, but you could use speedtest.net if you are wanting to do this on another ISP's network. I just like to do this to make sure that it's working. We can see that our actual connection speed, we can see when we run, in this instance, our advanced test, shows us here that our connection to the router is actually faster than its connection to the internet. This just shows we are not losing any speed by going through the repeater. All right, so now we know all of this works. We can take our repeater, and like I said before, we can put this probably halfway between our router, our ISP's router or our StarLink router, and the dead spot or the area we're trying to get wireless to. That's really the whole simple process of using an extender. You could again repeat this process again and put another one the different way through your property and extend the wireless again. So that is just simple, use an extender to extend your current Wi-Fi. So let's progress on with some of the mesh devices. So we're going to start with this, the TP-Link X68. Stats are at the end that we've done on our tests here to give you some idea of how these perform. Really simple with all the mesh devices, slightly different setup, but all pretty much the same. So our first thing is we are going to need to plug this into the power. So let's do that here. All right, and then once it's plugged into the power, we need to plug this in to our router. So we've got a couple of options. If we're using StarLink, then we need the optional Ethernet adapter, so we can plug that in directly from there. There are a couple of ports there on the TP-Link, so obviously that's an advantage of the mesh. When we add in the second one later on, we can have a couple of Ethernet ports at the other end. If you're plugging this into a normal ISP's router, then again you just need a spare Ethernet port in the back. Potentially you can take that router away afterwards. With the StarLink, we're going to put this into bypass mode, but with the normal ISP's router, as long as they give you an Ethernet cable in, then you can just plug that directly into this mesh device. Otherwise, what you can do is leave it plugged into your router and you can turn off the wireless. Right, so then we need to go grab the app because everything's done with an app. So go and download the app, get your TP-Link Deco app, and let's start that going. All right, so it wants to know about the location settings. I don't often give a lot of that away, so I'll have to keep clicking that on the way through. We can choose our Deco model. X68 is the one that we want here, so we go down and get that. All right, reminds you of everything that you need. It says here to turn off the modem. We actually have this plugged in and we're using these as add-ons. So for the moment, we're not going to do anything with that. We can leave our modem plugged in. If you want to replace yours and you're not on StarLink, then you can take your router out of that setup completely if you want to. So we're going to plug in the devices. It's waiting for the flashing light. So now the light is flashing. All right, we can start the configuration. You can see here it's looking for a default wireless network it's created, so let it join that. All right, I keep saying continue without location. It doesn't seem to be very happy with that. All right, so we go through here. We can give it a name or choose where we've positioned it. All right, and now it wants to know how it's going to get the IP. We're in StarLink, we're just going to let that pick that up with dynamic, but you can change those settings if you're using a different ISP. All right, now it wants to create the wireless name. So this is your SSID. This is your single name that you're going to use across all of these. So put your wireless name in. We'll call it the Tech Geeks. Give it a simple, easy password called the Tech Geeks. All right, and it's going to go off and configure the unit. You might have to wait a few minutes now while it goes through and does that. All right, so it's now configured my unit and now it wants to connect to the Wi-Fi. So now it's completing up. It's created this new mesh network and off it goes. All right, and it's trying to join me, and in a moment, there we go, it is now joined. It wants to ask if I want to add any more of these. I'm going to skip that for the moment, but you can add those to fill out your dead spots as you need. And you can see we're now in the app there's a little bit you can learn and some of the features and things that you can go around and use the app for. But hopefully that's a good starting point. Now, because we're on StarLink, I'd just like to do a test. All right, so you might do this by using the speedtest.net app. We're just using the StarLink one. So this is going to test the speed that StarLink gets first. And once it's done that, we're actually going to jump into advanced speed test, because that'll allow us to test the speed between the device and my StarLink router. So there we go. Let's see where we've got to. We can see that that's now going over 400 and something odd megasecond, which is 3 or 4 times faster than my StarLink connection. So even if I have this one repeating the main one, and we'll see maybe a drop down to 250 megasecond, and even if I went through another one, I would still be faster than my StarLink connection. Now, if we've got StarLink, we have an option now. We can now follow this through, and we can actually turn this connection into bypass, which is the closest you get really with StarLink to turning your router off or replacing it. So now that this is all set up, pop your StarLink router in bypass mode. Once it's in bypass mode, you'll probably need to pull the power out of your Deco unit and restart it. Once it restarts, it will now be in charge of your network. Your StarLink router still needs to remain on, but it won't be doing anything of your network. It will all be a new mesh wireless. If you were doing this without StarLink, then again, you could replace your router now, and it would pick up an IP address from your ISP. So that's how simple it is to get a TP-Link Deco gone. Like I said, results at the end. So hopefully you found that a little bit useful. We're going to move on to the next one now. Okay, so let's move on to another one. We're going to look at the D-Link. This is the D-Link Eagle Pro AI. Stats are at the end, but I'm just going to show you around the unit. We've got some other box openings on our YouTube channel if you want to look at what you get in the box. You get 3 Ethernet ports on this, which is a little bit of an advantage. The TP-Link only had 2. Again, this was in a 2-pack, but you can get singles, you can get multi. Remember, you're going to extend this for however you need, depending on the composition of the walls and the distance you need to cover. So same principle as before. Let's get that powered on. All right, now if we're using StarLink, same thing as before. Going to plug that in to our Ethernet port, our optional Ethernet adapter with StarLink, and into the yellow port there of the D-Link, and push the button to power it up. So that device is now powering up. We're doing this example with StarLink, like we've said, but you could just be using a normal ISP's router. We've got a TP-Link Archer router here. As long as you've got a spare Ethernet port, you can plug it in to the back of that. And if you get a straight Ethernet connection from your ISP, then these could be used to completely replace that. They are a router and a wireless access point. So now that's booting up, we're actually going to wait for a colored light to appear on the top. All right, and as always, you're going to need the app. So go and get the D-Link app so that we're ready to go. All right, so the D-Link setup is very slightly different. It wants me to scan the barcode. So let me just scan the barcode there. There we go. Right. So that's now got the setup underway. Again, it says to turn off the modem. We need, in the StarLink incident, because we're plugging this in, we need StarLink. Please don't turn that off. You need it to be running. If you've plugged this into your normal router, then again, you need that to be running. If you're replacing it for your ISP, then you can take that out of the way. All right, so it's now going to go and hunt for that new wireless that it has started to create. All right, so here it goes. We're letting that have a little bash at connecting to it. All right, just follow that through. And right, here we go now. It is now connecting. Now, this is interesting. It wants to know our internet service provider. To be fair, I think you could probably get away with putting anything in there. I just left this as Aussie Broadband, even if we were on StarLink. Nice little advert for them, I guess. That'll get picked up somewhere. All right, and then actually what you can do once you've done that is there's an option there at the bottom that says I can't find one. So grab I can't find one, and it'll just do a little scan, and it'll realize that it doesn't know who it is, which doesn't really matter in either of these instances because these routers are on and so ready to go. So it will then ask us for your SSID. You remember that that's your network name. So you're going to choose that network name that you want to appear over all of these devices. It will just be the one username password all your devices will use. So just plug those details in there and a password so that you can log in later. All right, and you can give it a name. I often give each of these access points a name so I know which room they are in. I'll call this one Office. Then it wants to go and configure this and add it to my account. This takes a little while, so be patient. There it is. It's chugging its way through, and it's almost to the end. All right, and now it's going to ask us, do I want to join the new wireless network? So let me join our new wireless network. All right, and now it wants to add more devices. I'm only just going to do the one, but you can obviously start to add more of these and then spread them out across your property. Plenty of options in there in the app. You can learn how to do all of that later. This is more about how to get this all running. So let's run into the StarLink speed test. As I said in the previous one, this just gives me an idea of the speed that we get between the device and the router. So I'm really waiting for this to go to the advanced test. If you're doing this and it's not on StarLink, maybe use the speedtest.net app or go to their webpage, and it just makes sure that you are getting the speed that you need. Remember, we're interested in the speed that these work between this and your ISP, not the speed of your ISP on the internet. So we can see here, I've currently got a download speed of about 130 megasecond, all right, and I can see that I'm almost touching 400 megasecond. So again, almost 3 times the speed I'm getting on this than I am on my internet connection. So I know that even with at least one mesh and halving my speed, I'm still going to be getting more than I'm getting on my StarLink. Now, because we're on StarLink, we have the option now to put our StarLink router in bypass mode, which turns all its wireless features over and hands it to D-Link. So let's click that, and then you want to probably put the device in reboot, so power it off and power it back on again. That's the D-Link mesh, and once that comes back up, it will now be the controller of your network. You will still need your StarLink router on, all right, powered on, but the wireless and network will be controlled from your D-Link. If you're just doing this not on StarLink, then of course you can take your old router out if you want to and plug the cable directly from the internet service provider in, or you can just turn the wireless off and now use mesh wireless through your property. Like I said, stats are at the end, but hopefully that's been useful having a look at the D-Link Eagle Pro. So next up is our Netgear Orbis. These have been around for a good period of time. They're really well built, very, very popular, great device. You are going to get, it's a slightly different setup. So you do get a primary unit. The other ones that we've tested, they're all versatile, but here you do get a primary unit and then satellite unit. So you've got 4 Ethernet ports, or 3, and an internet connection on your main, and then you get 2 on each of the satellites. The principle and the setup is pretty much the same. So again, let's get that main one powered on and plugged into the internet port. If you are using StarLink, then remember you need that optional StarLink Ethernet adapter to make this work. If you're using something else, you've got an ISP's router, a NetHawk, or a TP-Link Archer like this, then you can plug it directly into there and turn off the wireless. Alternatively, if your ISP just gives you a straight Ethernet connection, then you can plug this directly into your Orbi. It will work as a router and an access point. Then, of course, we need the amazing app. So off we go again. We are going to go and find our Orbi or our Netgear app. So once you've downloaded that, gone through and creating an account, you are ready to go. Let us hit this and get our things on the go here. All right, so this is another scan your barcode. So let me go down and scan the barcode there. All right, and this allows it to know what to join. So it's now going to ask us to check everything is in place. It wants you to unplug your modem. We're doing this with StarLink. Please keep your modem on because it's your internet connection. If you're doing this with another ISP, then potentially you can take that router out at this point and plug your ISP directly into it. But you might find it easier to plug it in through your router first and move it later. All right, so it wants you to position all the satellites. I do suggest that you set these up next to each other and then move them later on. All right, it's going to give you a lot of options, and it does take quite a while to go through all of the setup while it scans and tries to find everything. So do be patient while it does that. All right, let's get to, hopefully it's at the, coming to the end here. Here we go. So now it wants my phone to join our little Orbi network that it temporarily created. All right, and it's detecting all of our devices. We've only got one. We'll maybe add the other one in later on, which you can add as many as you need. Position those for your dead spots. So we'll let that go through and detect. All right, and now it's wanting to start to get here. So it wants to create your Wi-Fi. So again, let's put in here, we're going to call this Tech Geeks. This is your single SSID that's going to be used throughout your property. All right, and a suitable password for it. We also want a password to be able to log in and manage the unit later on. And so let's pop that in. Hopefully it will meet the requirements. There we go. And then wants to know where I'm born and where my mother's born. Not quite sure why that is, but probably if I forgot my password, it might be useful. All right. And now it's going to go and set this up. It's going to take a little while to get through here. And then, oh, look, you see, there we go. It wants to join our new Tech Geeks network. All right, it wants to go and check for new firmware. I have actually already updated this, but if you've had this for, it might be this has been on the shelf for a little bit, that it will want to go and update. So let it go through and run. All right, and then you will see that we've got here, made sure everything's right, and the device is here so that you can do some of the settings and security settings if you want to. Your wireless network is now up and running. You can add more of these to cover your dead spots as you need. Because we're testing this on StarLink, I want to go and just check that this is giving us decent performance. So we're just going to go into the StarLink app and start up the speed test. The speed test first checks our internet connection speed. You could do this with speedtest.net as well if you're just not using StarLink. At least that should show you that you're getting your normal expected internet speed and not getting any loss going through this wireless. The great thing with the StarLink app is it will actually now test the speed if I use advanced speed test between my Orbi and the router, which is what I really want to see. And you can see there it's almost at 500 megasecond. So it's amply multiple times faster than my StarLink connection speed. So I'm not seeing any loss. So I could go through one of these or two of these and still see my full internet connection speed. Now, because this is StarLink, we now have this running. We can actually go in and put the router in bypass mode. This turns off the wireless on the StarLink router. So let's do that. You probably want to pull the power now on the main StarLink router, the main Orbi, and plug it back in again. So it boots up and it will now be in control of your network. If you were doing this on the non-StarLink setup, now's the time to take your ISP's modem out of the way and put the Orbi in place instead and allow it to power up and service your network. On StarLink, you still will need the StarLink router, but it will be in bypass mode and the rest of the network will be carried by these Netgear devices. So I hope that has been useful having a look at Netgear Orbis. Again, of this model that we've tested, we've got some stats at the end of the video that you might find useful. All right, so let's move on to Ruijie as another. We've got two options inside Ruijie. We have the R6, these are much more similar to all the others we've been looking at, D-Link and everything else. So we're going to use these. Setup is pretty simple and straightforward. They've got 4 Ethernet ports on them, so pretty versatile. We're also going to look at this, which although not sold in a multi-pack, this is the Ruijie EW3200 GX Pro. This has got 5 Ethernet ports. It's got a large number of antennas. We see this getting through 4 brick concrete walls really, really well. And 2 of these will cost you less than 500. So it still fits in our testing. You would just set these up individually in the same way as we're going to set these Ruijies up. These R6s anyway. All right, so that's another option to look at, 2 of those if you want really good coverage just because of the antenna, but it doesn't maybe look quite so visually appealing. So we're going to take our device, let's go and plug that power plugged in there now and plug that Ethernet in. Obviously, if we're doing this with StarLink, we are plugging that into our optional StarLink Ethernet adapter. If you're doing that without StarLink, then you just need a port on your router to plug it into. Alternatively, you can plug it directly into your NBN service if you have an Ethernet connection. All right, and that's starting to boot up. Now, on the bottom of these is a barcode. Sometimes it's a little bit too small. You do need to go and grab the Ruijie app. So let's go and grab that Ruijie app. And you will have needed to have created a project. So go and sign up online, create your project, all right, and then start up your Ruijie app. Once you go into your Ruijie app, all right, and into your project, you will then see that you have the option to add a new device. If it isn't there, then you can swipe up from the bottom there under basic and choose that. So you can now choose to scan the underside of the device. Sometimes if it's a bit too small, then maybe we'll just need to actually type the serial number in. All right, there we go. And we can now choose add. Or finish, all right, or go into the project. You can name that, so you can see I can name that office. I might have a different one in another room, so I can give that a different name. With these, you're going to choose these as a gateway. So apply, and I'm going to go into the project. So I'm going to enter the project now. So now we're in the project. These do often take 4 or 5 minutes to update. That's why they do need to be connected to an active connection with StarLink. So now they've called home. All right, in a couple of moments that will show 1 of 1, and I could have carried on. I could scan my second device in there as well. So now that's in there. Once it's updated, we can see it's called home. We can now configure our settings. So again, swipe up from basic, all right, and then you can see Wi-Fi settings. Go into Wi-Fi settings, and this is where we're going to set our SSID. And our password. So our SSID is our network name that is used across all of these devices. So as my phone roams or travels between different rooms, it will continue to find the best wireless access point to join to. So let's put in here, so yeah, we're going to call that the Tech Geeks there. You need to turn encryption on. That means we need a password, otherwise it's going to be open and anybody can connect to it. So we're going to put a password in there as well, and now save it. So now that's going to push those settings. So it wouldn't matter if we're using these R6s here or if we'd used these EW3200s, it would have been the same setup process. So as long as they're connected to the internet, now they will pick up their config. So at this point now, all right, we're going to continue our test like we've done with all of the others. So slightly different, we're going to need to go to settings, and we're just going to need to browse for the wireless network that we've created called the Tech Geeks. Then we're going to join that, and we're now connected to this. We're now going to go to our StarLink app. If you have not done this with StarLink, maybe use your speedtest.net app on your phone. It's just going to show you that you can still get your full internet speed without any degradation of speed. The great thing with the StarLink app is it's now running, testing our actual download speed. But once we have got past that, we can now then choose advanced Wi-Fi. And this is now going to test not just our speed from our StarLink, but also the speed my device is getting through our Ruijie device and essentially to the StarLink router. So you can see it's multiple times faster than our StarLink connection. So even if we lose half of our chat speed between these two devices, so even if our 400 or so megasecond drops to 200 meg, we are still going to be running faster than we do on our StarLink connection. So that's just showing you that we have more performance in these than's needed for our internet connection. And like I said, if we'd done that, we would have done the same thing exactly with this, connected to the Wi-Fi and done the same. Now, if we're using StarLink, we can now take this StarLink and we can turn it into bypass mode. So let's go into settings here and switch this into bypass mode and hit OK. That turns off all the wireless features. You need to still keep that running. And I would suggest that you repower, take the power out and power back on your Ruijie R6, because this will now pick up all the details directly from the StarLink. Or if you were doing this on a normal router as well, take the router out of line or turn the wireless off, and you can reboot this and it will now be then in control of your network. If you're StarLink, you still need to keep this router turned on because it's providing power to your dish, but your wireless is now being run by Ruijie. So hopefully that gives you an idea of how to achieve this with Ruijie and get everything running. So hopefully that's been a good go through a number of vendors. Now listen, everybody's going, oh, but there are others. Yes, there are. There's the Google Nest, there's the Amazon Eero, there are ones made by Tender, there's one made by Asus. There are many, many other mesh devices out there. What we've tried to do is pick the ones, like we said, that were sub $500, that were wireless 6, and what we felt gave probably the greatest opportunity to extend your network, both inside and potentially outside. The other vendors sit somewhere in the middle of all of this for performance. But if you're looking to get this to another building, then these offer a great opportunity for this. If you want to put this in maybe a less normal home environment and in a barn or in a shed, then you need something a little bit more robust, and that's what these offer. So hopefully it's been useful as a run through. Do look at the performance stats that we put at the end, that we've given a basic test in a house to give you some material and distance understanding. But do also keep those two things that we've talked about. Wireless is about density, not distance. You need to look at more access points than trying to get one that covers everything. And do bear in mind that there are materials that wireless does not like traveling through. Metal, we've talked about dense stone, concrete. All of those will have an impact on how many of these devices you need to get the best wireless coverage throughout your property or be able to extend it to others. And then that last point is that you halve the speed for each one of these that you go through. So you need to make sure that you're purchasing devices that have an AC rating for the wireless 5 standard or AX rating for wireless 6 that are 2 or 3 times faster than the internet connection you've got. So if you've got StarLink and you're getting 200 megasecond, you want to get something that's got an AC rating that's really 1000 and above, because that means that you can get through 2 devices. One device will take it down to about 500 megasecond, the next device will take it down to about 250, and if you do that, you'll actually see there's no performance difference or loss, even though you're going through multiple repeaters. So hopefully you found that useful. It's filled in some gaps for you. And if there's anything else we can help you with, do shout out to us at thetechgeeks.com. We'd be more than happy to help. So we're going to put a few test results up on the screen for you. These are ones that we've just done simply, just again, using a speed testing app just over and over again. We just wanted to get an idea of how each of these performed in circumstances that you would see inside your building yourself. So here we go, the first set for those ones that we've tested. This is standing right next to the router. Hopefully with the best signal that we can get. This is all tested on a full 1 gig by 1 gig dedicated fiber link. So you can see we've got wired and wireless, and we're going to repeat this through all of the tests that we've got. The wireless is if we've actually plugged a laptop directly into the Ethernet port of the extender or the mesh point, all right, and obviously the mesh point is directly connected then into that 1 gig internet connection. This is our guideline, and we're going to use that all the way through. So you're going to see that the wireless is never going to be that same speed. We still have issues around wireless getting performance, but it will give you some idea of what we can get stood or connected right next to that access point. We then move around about 9 meters away through one Besser brick concrete filled wall of probably about 10 centimeters thick. So it gives you an idea of how these devices perform, both wired. So again, we're using the repeater or the extender connected to a laptop and connected to it wirelessly. You can see a speed degradation for most of these devices, but it will show you what you might need to do if you're trying to get this to a granny flat or something else, what it would be like traveling through the walls. Now we move to the next stage. This is around about 12 meters away. This has traveled through 3 Besser brick concrete filled walls, each of around about 10 centimeters thick, and gives you another idea of how each one of these devices perform, both wired and wireless. You will notice that some of these have dropped off quite significantly at this point. We then move to our final test point, which is 19 meters away from the initial access point. So we've set the primary one up in obviously 19 meters away, and we're now using the repeater unit. And as you can see, this is 19 meters away through 4 Besser brick concrete filled walls, again, each one about 10 centimeters thick. You can see a couple of the devices here aren't working at all at this distance, but we're still seeing it for many of the others are still performing. So hopefully that just shows you the distance you can get. 20 meters, we'll be expecting really to put these every 10 meters, and then you're going to get 10 meters on either side of them. But hopefully that gives you some real world tests of how we've seen each of these perform.